Love begins with how you speak. Before love ever becomes a promise, a bond, or a lifelong commitment, it is born in the quiet power of words. Words are not small things, they are seeds. They can grow gardens of trust or fields of fear. They can remind someone of their worth or slowly convince them they are invisible. The way you speak to those you love becomes the voice they hear in their hardest moments. So choose your words with intention, with tenderness, with truth, because love spoken with care has the power to heal what the world has tried to break. Love begins with how you speak, because before anyone feels loved, they feel heard. Long before grand gestures or lifelong promises, there is a tone, a sentence, a pause. The voice you use in moments of calm and in moments of conflict becomes the emotional climate of the relationship. Gentle words can soften the hardest days, while careless ones can linger like echoes long after they are spoken. What you say and how you say it teaches people whether love is a safe place or a battlefield. Words carry memory. A single sentence spoken in anger can stay with someone for years, replaying in their quiet moments, shaping how they see themselves. In the same way, a single sentence spoken with kindness can become a lifeline, something they hold on to when the world feels heavy. This is why mindful speech matters. It is not about perfection. It is about awareness. It is about understanding that your voice can be a shelter or a storm, and choosing shelter whenever you can. Healthy relationships are not built on silence or sarcasm, but on language that honors dignity. When you speak with respect, you tell the other person, "You matter, even when we disagree." Respectful words do not erase conflict, they guide it. They allow disagreement without destruction, honesty without cruelty. They remind both people that love does not disappear just because opinions differ. Listening is part of speaking well. Too often, people listen only to respond, not to understand. But when you slow down and truly listen, your words change. They become less defensive and more thoughtful. They begin to reflect empathy rather than ego. Listening deeply allows your speech to come from compassion instead of control, and that is where connection grows strongest. There will be moments when emotions rise, when patience thins, when hurt tries to speak before wisdom does. In those moments, the most powerful choice is restraint. Not every thought needs a voice, and not every feeling needs sharp language. Pausing before you speak is not weakness, it is strength. It is choosing the long-term health of the relationship over the temporary release of anger. Speaking with love also means speaking truth, but truth wrapped in care. Honesty should not be a weapon, it should be a bridge. Words meant to help should never be used to humiliate or belittle. When truth is spoken with kindness, it invites growth instead of defensiveness. It creates space for change without shame. At its core, the way you speak shapes how love feels. Love should feel warm, not tense, safe, not fearful, alive, not shrinking. When your words uplift, encourage, and affirm, you build a relationship where both people can breathe freely. Because in the end, love is not only shown through actions, it lives in the daily language of how you speak to each other, especially when it matters most. Respect is the quiet foundation beneath every lasting bond. It is not loud, it does not demand attention, yet without it, everything slowly collapses. Love may begin with emotion, attraction, or shared dreams, but respect is what allows love to stand upright through time. It is the way you treat someone when no one is watching, the way you speak their name, the way you value their feelings, even when you do not fully understand them. When respect is present, people feel safe being themselves. They do not have to shrink their opinions, silence their pain, or pretend to be someone else to be accepted. Respect says, "Your voice matters here." It recognizes that two people can be different and still be deeply connected. Differences stop being threats and start becoming lessons, ways to grow wider in understanding rather than narrower in judgment. Respect shows itself in small, everyday choices. It is in not interrupting when someone is speaking. It is in honoring boundaries without resentment. It is in keeping promises, not because you are forced to, but because your word means something. These moments may seem ordinary, but they quietly build trust, and trust is what turns relationships into something solid and real. In times of conflict, respect becomes even more important. Disagreements are inevitable, but disrespect is optional. When respect is lost, arguments turn into battles, and love becomes collateral damage. But when respect remains, even hard conversations can lead to clarity instead of destruction. You can disagree without demeaning, express anger without cruelty, and set limits without shutting the other person out. Respect also means seeing the humanity in someone even when they disappoint you. It is easy to be kind when things are smooth. It is harder and more meaningful to remain respectful when emotions are heavy. Respect does not ignore hurt, but it refuses to devalue the person causing it. It chooses understanding over humiliation, growth over punishment. A relationship rooted in respect allows both people to evolve. No one feels trapped in an old version of themselves. Mistakes become opportunities to learn rather than labels to carry forever. Respect gives permission to grow, to change, and to heal without fear of being judged or abandoned for becoming more honest. Without respect, love becomes fragile. It begins to depend on control, fear, or obligation. But with respect, love gains strength. It becomes steady, resilient, and capable of weathering storms. Respect turns challenges into teachers and setbacks into shared experiences rather than dividing lines. At the deepest level, respect is love made visible. It is love that listens, love that honors, love that protects dignity, even in difficult moments. When respect is the root, every bond has a chance to grow tall and wide, grounded enough to survive the seasons, and strong enough to hold two people without breaking either one. Listening is one of the most powerful gifts you can give another human being, yet it is often the most neglected. To truly listen is not to wait for your turn to speak, not to prepare a defense, and not to rush toward fixing what you think is broken. Real listening is presence. It is the quiet decision to set aside your own noise and step fully into someone else's world, even if only for a moment. When you listen as if their story matters, you tell the other person that their experiences are valid. You tell them that their feelings are not too much, not inconvenient, not a burden. In that space, people soften. They speak more honestly. They trust more deeply. Because being heard is often more healing than being advised. Sometimes the heart does not need answers. It needs acknowledgement. Many relationships suffer not because of a lack of love, but because of a lack of listening. People talk past each other, carrying unspoken pain, unmet needs, and misunderstood intentions. Words are exchanged, but connection is missed. True listening bridges that gap. It slows the moment down and says, I am here with you, not above you, not against you. Listening requires humility. It asks you to admit that you do not already know everything the other person is trying to say. It asks you to be curious rather than certain. When you listen without judgment, you allow someone to show you who they really are, not just who you expect them to be. And in that honesty, intimacy grows quietly and naturally. There will be times when what you hear is uncomfortable. Stories may carry pain, frustration, or truths that challenge you. Listening does not mean agreeing with everything. It means respecting the courage it takes to speak. It means holding space for emotions without trying to control them. When people feel safe to express themselves, they stop shouting and start sharing. Listening also means hearing what is not said. It is noticing the pauses, the lowered voice, the sighs that carry more meaning than words. It is asking gentle questions instead of making assumptions. It is recognizing that silence can be full of emotion, and that patience can speak louder than advice ever could. Trust is not built in grand declarations or dramatic gestures. It is built quietly, patiently, in the small moments that most people overlook. Every promise kept, Every word spoken with honesty, every action that aligns with intention lays a brick in the foundation of trust. Trust is cumulative, it grows slowly, and once broken, it takes far longer to repair than it did to build. It asks for patience, consistency, and the courage to be reliable even when no one is watching. Consistency is the heartbeat of trust. When someone knows they can count on you day after day, moment after moment, they begin to feel safe. Safety is not glamorous, but it is transformative. It allows vulnerability to exist without fear and connection to deepen without walls. Being consistent does not mean perfection. It means showing up, following through, and honoring the commitments you make. Even small acts, when repeated over time, send a clear message. I am here. You can rely on me. Honesty is another cornerstone. Speaking truthfully, even when it is uncomfortable, creates a sense of reliability. Lies and half-truths may bring temporary ease, but they erode the very foundation of closeness. People need to know that what you say aligns with what you feel, and what you feel aligns with your actions. Honesty is not only about telling facts, it is about being transparent with intentions, fears, and emotions. When honesty is present, people learn to trust not just your words, but your character. Trust also grows in the way you handle mistakes. Everyone falters and everyone disappoints at times. What matters is how you respond. Owning up to errors, apologizing sincerely, and taking steps to correct them signals integrity. Avoiding blame or hiding wrongdoing may seem easier in the moment, but it chips away at trust quietly, invisibly, until the bond begins to wobble. Trust is strengthened when it sees accountability paired with humility. Small gestures often carry the weight of trust more than big declarations. Returning a call on time, keeping a promise to meet, noticing when someone needs space, or remembering a detail they shared. These are the subtle acts that speak louder than any grandiose words. Each action silently affirms that you are reliable, attentive, and devoted to the health of the relationship. Trust is built where consistency meets care, where attention meets empathy. Perhaps the most profound aspect of trust is patience. It cannot be forced or rushed. It grows as people witness over time that love, respect, and commitment are not fleeting. It requires faith that your actions, when aligned with your words, will create a safe place for another heart to rest. In relationships, trust is the quiet promise that love can endure uncertainty, mistakes, and the passage of time. When trust is nurtured in these small, deliberate ways, it becomes unshakable, and the bond it holds is resilient enough to weather the fiercest storms. When you choose to be trustworthy, you give someone freedom, the freedom to be vulnerable, the freedom to hope, the freedom to believe in love itself. Trust is the soil in which intimacy grows, and tending to it carefully allows a relationship to flourish in ways that words alone could never achieve. It is in the consistent, honest, and patient moments that the deepest love is quietly, enduringly made. In healthy relationships, listening creates balance. Both people feel seen, not overlooked, valued, not dismissed. It turns everyday conversations into moments of connection and difficult conversations into opportunities for growth. When listening becomes a habit, misunderstandings lose their power and trust finds room to breathe. At its heart, listening is an act of love because it says, without saying it aloud, "You matter to me." It says, "Your story deserves time." In a world that is always rushing to speak, to judge, to interrupt, choosing to listen deeply becomes a radical form of care. And when people feel truly heard, love does not have to shout, it is already understood. Love is not a cage, and it is not ownership. It is tempting in relationships to think that closeness is measured by constant presence, by endless messages, or by knowing every detail of someone else's life. But true love understands that each soul needs room to grow, to breathe, to stretch into its own shape without fear of being judged or abandoned. Giving space is not withdrawing affection, it is affirming that the other person is whole, even when they are apart from you. Space allows trust and independence to flourish together. When you step back, you give the other person a chance to explore who they are, what they value, and what they dream of, without feeling constrained by expectation. This does not weaken love, it strengthens it. It teaches both people that the bond is not dependent on proximity, but on choice. You choose each other every day, not because you are forced together, but because love has roots deep enough to survive absence. Boundaries are part of giving space. They are gentle lines drawn not in fear or resentment, but in care. Saying, I need time to process, or I need a moment for myself, is not rejection. It is honesty. It is a recognition that your emotional health is as important as your love for the other person. Respecting boundaries allows each person to feel safe in their individuality, and it prevents resentment from building silently where closeness should be tender. Space also allows perspective. When tensions rise or misunderstandings occur, stepping back provides clarity. It is a moment to reflect, to consider another's point of view, to breathe before responding. Love that does not allow space becomes reactive, controlling, and suffocating. Love that allows space is patient, thoughtful, and enduring. It knows that distance does not equal loss, and that absence can make the heart recognize its own depth of feeling. In healthy relationships, space is balanced with presence. It is not cold separation, but thoughtful rhythm. There is a time to be near, to share, to hold, and a time to step aside, to give room for self-discovery. This balance honors both hearts without diminishing the connection. People do not lose themselves in relationships that give them breathing room. They find themselves more fully, and in doing so, they bring more of themselves back to the partnership. Love with space also fosters gratitude. When you are not clinging, you begin to cherish the moments you share. You recognize the joy of being together without taking it for granted. Absence becomes a teacher of presence, and freedom becomes the foundation for deeper commitment. It is a paradox. Love grows stronger when it is not constrained. Ultimately, giving space without creating distance is an act of faith. Faith in the other person, faith in yourself, and faith in the relationship. It says, I believe in you. I believe in us. I do not need to control every breath you take to love you fully. When love is practiced this way, it is liberating, nourishing, and profoundly sustaining. It allows two people to walk side by side while still standing tall as individuals, and it turns the bond into something that endures, not because it clings, but because it chooses to stay. There is a quiet power in choosing understanding over winning. In many relationships, conflict is inevitable. Opinions clash, emotions flare, and both people feel certain that their way is right. But love is not a competition. It does not tally victories or measure who is correct. Choosing understanding means stepping back from the need to dominate a conversation or prove a point and instead asking, how can I truly see this from your eyes? It is in that question that empathy begins to take root. When we prioritize understanding, we invite peace into the space between us. It does not mean ignoring our own feelings or pretending to agree when we do not. It means valuing the other person's perspective enough to listen fully before reacting. In the heat of disagreement, it is tempting to raise our voices, assert authority, or protect our ego. Yet in that moment, each word we choose can either build walls or tear them down. By choosing understanding, we resist the impulse to win and open the door to connection instead. Understanding requires humility. It asks us to admit that our perspective, while valid, is not the only truth. The world is rich with experiences, and each person carries a history that shapes how they think, feel, and respond. When we remember this, arguments lose their urgency to prove something and gain the potential to become bridges rather than barriers. We start to see that disagreement does not diminish love. It is an opportunity to know someone more deeply. Patience is essential in this practice. People often mistake the loudest argument for passion, when in reality it is fear of being misunderstood or unseen. By pausing, breathing, and seeking to understand, we model a kind of love that does not need constant validation. We show that relationships are more important than being right, and that harmony matters more than pride. This patience nurtures an atmosphere where hearts feel safe enough to speak honestly, even when what they say might challenge us. Choosing understanding also transforms the way we respond. It encourages curiosity over judgment. Instead of reacting with anger, we ask questions. Why do you feel this way? Can you help me see your side? What can I do to support you? These small acts of empathy shift the energy from conflict to collaboration. In doing so, solutions begin to emerge naturally, and resentment has less room to grow. Love, guided by understanding, is creative, patient, and expansive. It is important to recognize that understanding is not weakness. It does not mean sacrificing your values or tolerating harm. Rather, it is strength in disguise, strength that resists the need to dominate, that values connection over ego, and that trusts in the resilience of love. When both people approach disagreements with this mindset, even the hardest conflicts can become moments of growth. At the heart of this choice is the realization that peace is more powerful than pride. Pride seeks to prove, to assert, to claim victory. Peace seeks to preserve the bond, to honor the human behind the words, to ensure that love outlives the argument. When we choose understanding over winning, we declare that the relationship is more valuable than any temporary need to be right. And in doing so, we create a space where love can thrive, unshaken and enduring. Before we can fully love another, we must first learn to love ourselves, not in the shallow sense of vanity, but in the deep, tender way that sees our own brokenness and chooses to heal it. Unhealed wounds, whether from childhood, past relationships, or silent disappointments, have a way of seeping into the spaces we share with others. They shape our fears, our reactions, and the walls we build to protect ourselves. Without awareness, these wounds can bleed onto innocent hearts, coloring our relationships with pain that is not theirs to bear. Healing begins with acknowledgement. We cannot fix what we refuse to see. It requires looking inward with courage, naming the hurt, and admitting the patterns we carry. This is not a quick task nor an easy one. It demands patience, honesty, and the willingness to face discomfort without fleeing. Every fear that surfaces, every memory that stings, is an invitation to understand ourselves better. And in that understanding, we gain the power to stop passing old pain onto those we love. Self-reflection is a powerful tool in this process. By observing our emotions, our triggers, and the ways we react in relationships, we learn to distinguish between what belongs to the present moment and what belongs to the past. Often, the anger, jealousy, or insecurity we feel is not about the other person at all. It is a mirror of unhealed pain within us. When we recognize this, we are no longer prisoners of our past. We are caretakers of our own hearts, and by extension, we can care for others without harm. Forgiveness begins at home, within ourselves. We forgive ourselves for mistakes, for moments of weakness, for times when we acted from fear rather than love. This act of self-compassion is transformative. It frees us from the weight of shame, allowing us to enter relationships with openness rather than defense. When we carry less resentment toward ourselves, we have less to project onto those we care about. We can love not from a place of desperation or fear, but from a place of fullness and freedom. Healing also requires setting boundaries, even with our own patterns. It is recognizing that certain behaviors, both in ourselves and in others, are harmful and must be addressed. To heal does not mean to ignore reality or accept harm. It means to protect our well-being while cultivating the capacity to give and receive love. In doing so, we ensure that our hearts are generous, not depleted, and that our relationships are nourished by clarity rather than confusion. Patience is essential because healing is never linear. There will be days of progress and days when old wounds reopen unexpectedly. Yet each step, no matter how small, is a declaration of self-respect. Each act of care toward ourselves strengthens the foundation upon which we build our connections with others. By tending to our own hearts, we make room for relationships that are safe, nurturing, and resilient. To heal oneself is not selfish, it is sacred work. It is the commitment to love authentically, to show up fully, and to offer another heart what we have cultivated in our own: understanding, compassion, patience, and grace. When we do this work, we no longer unknowingly hurt those we care about. Instead, we become vessels of healing, capable of giving and receiving love in its truest, most enduring form. Forgiveness is one of the quietest acts of courage a person can offer, and yet it is also one of the most powerful. Too often, people mistake forgiveness for weakness, for giving in, or for excusing harm. But true forgiveness is none of these things. It is a declaration of freedom, a conscious choice to release the weight of anger, resentment, or betrayal so that the heart can breathe again. To forgive is not to forget or to pretend that wrongs did not happen. It is to refuse to allow the past to dictate the present or the future. When we hold on to hurt, it acts like a chain around our hearts. Every memory of pain, every grievance, every quiet whisper of injustice keeps us tethered to moments we cannot change. It seeps into our relationships, distorts our trust, and makes love heavy. Forgiveness is the key that unlocks that chain. It does not mean that the other person is free of responsibility, but it means that we are choosing our own freedom first. It is an act of self-love as much as it is an act of grace toward another. Forgiveness is often misunderstood as a gift for the one who caused harm, but its deepest gift is for the one who forgives. Carrying resentment may feel like justice at first, but over time it only diminishes the soul. Anger and bitterness take energy, cloud perception, and stunt the ability to connect fully. When we forgive, we reclaim that energy, we restore clarity, and we make space for joy, compassion, and connection to enter. In this way, forgiveness is a radical act of self-preservation, a way of telling ourselves that we will not let the pain of yesterday steal the beauty of today. It is important to recognize that forgiveness is a process, not a single moment. It cannot be rushed, forced, or faked. Sometimes it begins with a quiet decision, an internal acknowledgement that we no longer wish to be controlled by a wound. Other times it unfolds gradually over conversations, reflection, and acceptance. There may be setbacks, days when memories flare and anger resurfaces, but each step forward is progress. Forgiveness grows strongest when it is paired with understanding, empathy, and the recognition that humans, including ourselves, are imperfect. Forgiving does not mean returning to the same patterns or remaining in harmful situations. True forgiveness can coexist with healthy boundaries. We can release the weight of resentment while still protecting ourselves from repeated harm. This paradox is the beauty of forgiveness. It frees without enabling, it heals without condoning, it restores without demanding forgetting. It is both shield and liberation, allowing us to move forward with clarity and grace. In relationships, forgiveness is the bridge between the mistakes of the past and the possibilities of the future. It allows love to breathe, to flourish, and to grow without being trapped under the shadow of past wrongs. When forgiveness is practiced sincerely, it transforms hearts, softens interactions, and nurtures a connection that is resilient, compassionate, and enduring. To forgive is to choose life over lingering pain, to embrace freedom over bitterness, and to open the heart to the beauty that exists here and now. It is a declaration that love is stronger than grievance, and that the human spirit, when willing, can rise above injury and carry the heart into a space where healing, trust, and joy are possible once more. Love should feel safe, not silent, because the heart thrives in freedom, not in fear. In relationships where safety is absent, people shrink, hide, and silence parts of themselves in order to survive. They hold back their dreams, their doubts, their laughter, and sometimes even their tears. But when love is truly present, it does not demand silence. It invites honesty. It welcomes vulnerability. It creates a space where every thought, feeling, and aspiration can exist without judgment, without punishment, and without shame. Safety in love begins with emotional presence. It is the knowledge that you can express yourself without the other turning away, without the other weaponizing your words, without the other dismissing your reality. It is the quiet confidence that even in moments of disagreement, your heart will not be crushed for speaking truth. This kind of safety nurtures authenticity. When people feel safe, they stop performing, stop hiding, stop calculating. They show up as themselves in all their complexities and contradictions because love has proven that it can hold them whole. True safety also includes respect for boundaries. To love safely is to recognize that each person has limits, emotional, physical, and mental, and to honor them consistently. It is not controlling, not invasive, and not manipulative. It allows breathing room without creating distance, freedom without neglect, and individuality without separation. When boundaries are respected, love becomes a haven, not a cage. People feel secure knowing that their needs, desires, and limits are taken seriously and will not be ignored or belittled. Safety in love encourages expression, even when it is uncomfortable. Anger, fear, grief, and doubt are not signs that love is failing. They are signs that hearts are alive. In healthy relationships, people can voice difficult truths without fearing reprisal. They can ask for support without feeling weak. They can share dreams without worrying about ridicule. This openness creates trust, and trust deepens connection. When both people know they can speak freely, love transforms from something fragile into something resilient, able to withstand life's inevitable storms. Love that feels safe also nurtures dreams. It allows people to pursue ambitions, take risks, and grow without being restrained by jealousy, insecurity, or control. To love safely is to celebrate individuality as much as togetherness. It is the confidence that each person can be fully themselves and still belong wholly in the relationship. When dreams are supported rather than stifled, both hearts expand, and the relationship thrives not out of necessity, but out of choice and admiration. Silence in love is a subtle form of harm. It tells people that their voice is not valued, that their presence is conditional, or that their needs are secondary. Safety, by contrast, communicates worth. It communicates dignity. It communicates that love is not a performance but a sanctuary. When people feel safe, they stop holding back, they stop fearing, and they begin to flourish. In the end, love should feel like home. A home where your voice is welcomed, where your emotions are valid, where your dreams are supported, and where your true self can exist fully. It should never feel like a test or a trap. Safety in love is the soil in which intimacy, trust, and joy grow. Without it, connection withers. With it, hearts can thrive freely, deeply, and enduringly, carrying each other through life not as prisoners, but as companions walking together with courage, trust, and grace.